Hana stood at the entrance of the training facility and felt very small. She had always been small for her age, but here, surrounded by warriors from across the galaxy, she felt like a child who had wandered into the wrong place. The orbital station Kronos 7 stretched above her head in impossible angles. Massive creatures walked past her without looking down. A reptilian warrior, scales gleaming like polished steel, strode by with footsteps that shook the metal floor. Behind him came something that looked like a walking tank, its armored shell reflecting the harsh lights. Each one was at least twice her height. Some were 3 times her size. She clutched her assignment papers tighter. 19 years old. 5 feet 2 inches tall. 110 pounds. The numbers looked even worse written down on official documents. Every other recruit's file she had glimpsed showed measurements that made her stomach turn. Heights measured in meters instead of feet. Weights that needed 3 digits. Move, human. The voice came from above. Hana looked up at a bear-like creature covered in thick fur. Its eyes were yellow and cold. You blocked the way. She stepped aside quickly. The creature lumbered past, followed by 2 more of its kind. They spoke to each other in deep, rumbling voices that made her chest vibrate. One of them glanced back at her and said something that made the others laugh. She did not need a translator to know they were laughing at her. The processing center was chaos. Recruits from 12 different species filled the massive hall, all waiting to receive their assignments. Hana joined the line marked for humans. There were maybe 30 humans in the entire facility. They looked lost among the hundreds of alien warriors. A tall human man stood ahead of her in line. He had broad shoulders and moved with the confidence of someone who belonged here. When he noticed her staring, he turned around. First day? He asked. Yes, Hana said. He looked her up and down, and something like pity crossed his face. How old are you? 19. Jesus, he shook his head. I'm Deho, 28, been here 6 months already. He paused. Look, kid, no offense, but this place eats people alive. People bigger and stronger than you. Maybe you should think about transferring to medical or engineering support. I passed the entrance exam, Hana said quietly. Yeah. Well, the exam doesn't punch you in the face. Deho turned back around. Conversation over. When Hana reached the front of the line, an insect-like creature with too many eyes processed her papers. Its mandibles clicked as it read her scores. It looked up at her, then back at the screen, then at her again. There must be error, it said in choppy but clear language. These scores too high for human of your size. They ran the test 3 times, Hana said. Same results each time. The creature made a sound like grinding metal. We shall see. It stamped her papers and pointed to a door. Barracks assignment Delta 7. Report to Captain Vorak tomorrow at 600 hours. The barracks were worse than she expected. She had been assigned to the smallest bunk in the farthest corner, next to a waste recycling unit that hummed constantly. The other humans in her section barely acknowledged her. They were all older, all bigger, all clearly more qualified to be here. That night, Hana could not sleep. The humming of the recycling unit was not the problem. Neither was the hard bunk or the cold air. She lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the station, footsteps in the corridors, voices in languages she did not know. Somewhere distant, the crash of something heavy hitting the ground. She thought about Deho's words, about the looks the other species gave her, about the creature at processing who thought her test scores were a mistake. Part of her agreed with all of them. What was she doing here? She should be back on Earth doing something normal, something safe, something that made sense for a girl her size. But another part of her, the part that had studied every file she could find about the Galactic Defense Force, knew something the others did not. She had watched hundreds of hours of training footage. She had memorized the fighting styles of each species. She had seen patterns that no one else seemed to notice. The big creatures were strong. They were fast. They were deadly. But they all fought the same way. They relied on strength and natural weapons. They expected their opponents to be afraid. They had spent their entire evolution as predators, as things that nothing else could challenge. Humans were different. Humans had spent millions of years being hunted by things bigger and stronger. Humans had learned to survive not by being the strongest, but by being the smartest, by being the most stubborn, by refusing to give up even when giving up was the logical choice. Hana finally fell asleep as the station's lights dimmed to simulate night. Her last thought before sleep took her was simple. Let them underestimate her. It would make what came next easier. Morning came too early. Hana dressed in the standard training uniform, which hung loose on her small frame. She had to roll up the sleeves and pant legs. In the mirror, she looked like a child playing dress-up in an adult's clothes. The training hall was enormous. It could have fit 3 football fields inside with room to spare. Hundreds of recruits stood in formation, organized by species. The humans were a tiny cluster at the edge, barely visible among the massive warriors around them. Captain Vorak entered the hall, and every voice fell silent. He was a reptilian sauron, 8 feet tall with scales that shifted between green and gold. His eyes were ancient and cold. Scars covered his arms and chest, proof of centuries of combat. "Welcome to Galactic Defense Force training," Vorak said. His voice carried across the hall without amplification. "Most of you will fail. Some of you will be injured. A few of you will die. This is acceptable. Better to discover your weakness here than on a battlefield where your failure kills others." He walked along the formations, examining recruits. When he reached the humans, he stopped. His eyes found Hana immediately. Of course they did. She was the smallest person in the entire hall. Vorak moved closer, towering over her. "You are the one with the high test scores." "Yes, sir," Hana said. "I think there was a computer error," Vorak said. "But regulations require I give you a chance to prove yourself." He gestured at the training course laid out across the hall. "Standard physical assessment. Completed in under 20 minutes to remain in the program." Hana looked at the course. It was designed for creatures twice her size. Walls to climb that were 10 feet high. Weights to carry that probably weighed as much as she did. Obstacles built for beings with natural strength and size advantages. 20 minutes, Vorak repeated. "Begin," Hana ran. The other recruits watched as she approached the first obstacle. A wall with handholds spaced for much longer arms. She jumped, caught the lowest grip, and pulled herself up. Her arms burned. She made it halfway up before her strength gave out, and she fell to the mat below. Somewhere in the watching crowd, someone laughed. Then someone else. Soon, dozens of voices were laughing at the tiny human who could not even climb the first wall. Hana stood up, breathing hard, and looked at the wall again. She had 18 minutes left. The wall was not the problem. Her approach was the problem. She was trying to climb it the way the bigger species would. That was stupid. She needed to climb it like a human. She ran at the wall from an angle this time, using her momentum to reach a higher handhold. Then she used the wall's corner, bracing her feet against both surfaces to climb faster. It was not elegant, but she reached the top. The laughter had stopped. Now there was just silence as she moved to the next obstacle, a series of weights to carry across a distance. Each weight was clearly labeled 200 pounds. She could not lift one, let alone carry it, but the rules said to complete the course. They did not say how. Hana found a rolling cart nearby used for equipment transport. She loaded the weights onto it and pushed. It was still hard, her legs screaming with effort, but it was possible. She got the weights to the designated area with 11 minutes remaining. The final obstacle was a combat simulation. She had to disable 3 automated drones using hand-to-hand combat. The drones were programmed to match the strength and speed of average recruits, which meant they were much stronger and faster than Hana. She watched the first drone circle her, analyzing her, preparing to strike. It moved like the big species moved, predictable, direct, relying on advantages it thought it had. When the drone attacked, Hana did not try to block or match its strength. She moved aside at the last possible moment, and as it passed, she struck the control joint on its arm with all her weight behind her fist. The drone stumbled. She hit it again, same spot, and something inside the joint broke. The drone's arm went limp. 2 more drones to go. 9 minutes left. Hana's whole body hurt, but she smiled anyway. Let them think she did not belong here. Let them laugh. She would show them what a human could do when everyone expected them to fail. She always fought better when the odds were against her. It was what her species did best. 3 weeks had passed since Hana completed the physical assessment. She had finished with 40 seconds to spare. Captain Vorak had said nothing, just marked her file and moved on to the next recruit. But she had seen something flicker in his ancient eyes. Not respect. Not quite. More like a predator recognizing that its prey might bite back. The training routine was brutal. Every day started at 5 in the morning and ended well after dark. Combat drills, tactical simulations, weapons training, physical conditioning designed to break bodies and spirits. Hana failed more than she succeeded. Her body was covered in bruises from sparring sessions where her opponents forgot to pull their punches. Or chose not to, but she kept a secret. Every night while the others slept, Hana watched training footage on her personal tablet. Hours and hours of recorded combat from every species in the defense force. She studied the way the Krovar warriors charged into battle, the way the Sauron used their tails for balance during strikes, the way the insectoid Manthar species telegraphed their attacks with subtle antenna movements. She filled notebooks with observations, patterns, weaknesses. Every species had them. The Krovar were powerful but straightforward. The Sauron were tactical but relied on reach advantages. The Manthar were fast but vulnerable to disrupted footwork. None of them had ever needed to develop complex strategies because their natural advantages had always been enough. Deho noticed her late night studying. "You need sleep more than you need to watch old fight videos," he said one night. "I need to understand them," Hana replied without looking away from her screen. A Krovar warrior was demonstrating a charging attack pattern. She had now seen this exact pattern 73 times from different Krovar fighters. It was universal to their species, instinctive. "Understanding them won't help when they hit you," Deho said, but he sounded less certain than he had on her first day. The incident happened during a routine sparring session in week 4. Hana was matched against various partners to practice defensive techniques. Most of them treated her carefully, aware that accidentally injuring the smallest recruit would bring unwanted attention. The instructors watched these sessions closely, but today Captain Vorak was absent, called away to a meeting with Station Command. Lieutenant Mira, the Manthar officer, was overseeing training instead. She was competent but lacked Vorak's authority. Some of the recruits sensed this. Gralth was a Krovar warrior who stood 8.5 feet tall, 600 pounds of muscle, fur, and barely controlled aggression. He had made his opinion of humans clear from day one. They were weak. They did not belong. Their presence in the defense force was an insult to proper warriors. When Gralth's name was called to spar with Hana, he smiled. It was not a friendly smile. His teeth were designed to tear meat. "Finally," Gralth said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "A chance to show what happens when prey tries to act like predator." Lieutenant Mira clicked her mandibles nervously. "Gralth, this is a training exercise. Standard safety protocols apply." "Of course," Gralth said, but his eyes never left Hana. "I will be very careful with the little human." Hana stepped onto the sparring mat. Her heart was beating fast, but her mind was calm. She had watched Gralth fight before. Big, powerful, aggressive. He relied entirely on intimidation and overwhelming force. Like all Krovar, he had probably never lost a fair fight in his life. The other recruits formed a circle around the mat. Word had spread quickly. A Krovar against the tiny human girl. This would be entertaining. Betting pools were already forming. The average bet gave Hana less than 5 seconds before she was knocked unconscious. "Begin," Lieutenant Mira said, her voice uncertain. Gralth did not wait. He charged immediately. A full-force attack that violated every safety protocol. This was not a training exercise to him. This was an execution. He intended to hurt Hana badly enough that she would be removed from the program. Medical discharge. Perhaps permanent injury. An object lesson to other humans who thought they belonged here. Time seemed to slow down for Hana. Her mind, trained by thousands of hours of study, processed everything in microseconds. Gralth's weight distribution. The angle of his shoulders. The way his right foot pushed off slightly harder than his left. The overconfidence in his eyes, certain of victory before the fight even began. She had seen this exact charge 73 times. She knew what came next better than Gralth did himself. Hana did not try to block, did not try to run. Instead, she dropped low and pivoted, moving with his momentum rather than against it. 600 pounds of Krovar warrior was unstoppable when charging forward, but that momentum became a weakness when the target was no longer there. As Gralth passed her, already off balance, Hana struck. Not a wild punch, not a desperate attempt. A precise palm strike to a nerve cluster on the left side of his neck. She had memorized Krovar anatomy 3 weeks ago, had identified the vulnerable points that their thick fur and muscle normally protected, had calculated the exact angle and force needed to trigger a neural shock response. The strike was perfect. All of her body weight, all of her momentum, focused into a single point of impact at exactly the right moment. Gralth crashed to the mat face first. His massive body shook the floor. Then he was still, unconscious before he fully understood what had happened. The training hall fell silent. 200 warriors from a dozen species stood frozen, trying to process what they had just witnessed. A Crovar warrior, member of the most feared combat species in known space, knocked out cold by a 110-pound human girl. In under 3 seconds, Lieutenant Mira rushed forward, medical scanner already in her hands. She checked Grauth's vitals, her antenna twitching with distress. He lives. Neural shock. He will wake soon. She looked up at Hana with multiple eyes that showed something that might have been fear. How did you do that? I studied, Hana said simply. Her hand hurt from the strike, but she kept her voice steady. His species has a vulnerable nerve cluster. I hit it. You studied? Another voice, deep and angry. One of the other Crovar warriors pushed through the crowd. You dare claim this was skill? This was luck. Grauth slipped. Review the footage, Hana said. She pointed at the cameras that recorded every training session. It is all there. Captain Vorak arrived 20 minutes later, called back early from his meeting. By then, Grauth had woken up, confused and humiliated. The training hall was in chaos. Crovar warriors demanded a rematch. Human recruits stood together, defensive and proud. Other species muttered among themselves, uncertain and uncomfortable. Vorak watched the footage 3 times. The entire hall watched with him on the large display screens. The first viewing was in real time, so fast that it was hard to see exactly what happened. The second viewing was slowed down. The third was frame by frame, analyzing every millisecond. There could be no doubt. No lucky slip. No accident. Hana had executed a textbook-perfect counterstrike targeting a specific anatomical weakness. The precision was surgical. The timing was flawless. The result was undeniable. Where did you learn Crovar anatomy? Vorak asked Hana. The medical database, Hana said. It is available to all recruits for first aid training. And you memorized the neural cluster locations? I memorized all vulnerable points for all species, Hana said. It seemed useful. Vorak was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried across the hall. What happened here today was not luck. It was not an accident. It was a demonstration of what happens when a warrior studies their enemy completely. He looked around at all the assembled recruits. Most of you rely on natural advantages, strength, speed, armor, instinct. You have never needed strategy because you have always had overwhelming force. He gestured at Hana. Humans do not have these advantages, so they develop different strengths. Observation, pattern recognition, the ability to find weakness in any opponent. He paused. This is why they survived on a death world filled with predators larger and stronger than them. This is why they now stand among you as equals. The hall remained silent. Vorak turned to Grauth, who was standing now, his pride more damaged than his body. You violated safety protocols. You attempted to seriously injure a fellow recruit. You are removed from combat training for 2 weeks. Use that time to think about what you learned today. Grauth's eyes burned with humiliation and rage, but he nodded. Yes, Captain. As he left the hall, he looked back at Hana once. The expression on his face was pure hatred. That night in the barracks, everything changed. The other human recruits treated Hana differently, not just with respect, but with hope. She had proven something they all desperately wanted to believe, that humans could compete here, that size and strength were not the only things that mattered. Deho sat on the edge of her bunk. You have been studying every night, he said. Learning how to fight all of them. Yes, Hana said. Teach us, Deho said. Teach all of us. Hana looked around the barracks. Every human there was watching her, waiting. They wanted to learn. They wanted to believe they belonged here. She thought about Grauth's face as he left, about the way the Crovar warriors had looked at her. She had made enemies today, powerful ones. This was just the beginning. Okay, Hana said, but you have to understand something first. We cannot. The crucible began on a cold morning 2 months after Hana knocked out Grauth. It was the most feared part of training, a month-long series of combat simulations designed to break even the strongest warriors. Half of all recruits failed the crucible. Some quit. Some were carried out on stretchers. A few did not come out at all. Squad assignments were posted at dawn. Hana found her name under Squad Theta. Mixed species. High difficulty rating. She scanned the other names and felt her stomach sink. 2 Skorvax warriors, Crag and Thornak, an insectoid Manthar named Vix, and 3 humans, herself, Deho, and a stealth specialist named Bora. The Skorvax were tank-like creatures with natural armor plating that could stop blade strikes. They were proud warriors who believed in one tactic: form an armored wall and crush everything in front of them. They had used this strategy for thousands of years. It had never failed them. Squad Theta met in a briefing room that felt too small for the massive Skorvax warriors. Crag looked at the humans and made a sound like grinding stone. "We are cursed with weak links," he said. "We follow Skorvax battle doctrine," Thornak added. "You humans stay behind us. Try not to die." Deho started to argue, but Hana put a hand on his arm. "Let them lead," she whispered. For now, the first Crucible mission was a disaster. Squad Theta was assigned to defend a position against a simulated enemy force. Crag and Thornak formed their traditional armored wall at the entrance. They refused to listen to tactical suggestions from the humans. When the enemy force attacked with flanking maneuvers, the Skorvax held their position stubbornly. The humans tried to cover the sides, but they were too few and too lightly armed. Mission failed in 12 minutes. The second mission was worse. An urban combat scenario. The enemy used the buildings for cover and height advantage. Crag and Thornak could not climb walls or move through tight spaces quickly. They became targets. Squad Theta was eliminated in 8 minutes. The third mission failed in 6 minutes. After the third failure, Instructor Voss, an avian Raptok with sharp eyes and sharper intelligence, called Squad Theta to his office. "You are performing below acceptable standards," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes focused on Crag and Thornak. "You are failing because you refuse to adapt." "We use the tactics of our ancestors," Crag said with pride. "Skorvax battle doctrine is perfect." "Your battle doctrine was developed for open-field warfare against enemies who charged directly at you," Voss said. "The Crucible tests you against varied tactics in complex environments. Your refusal to adapt is causing your entire squad to fail." Thornak's armored plates shifted with anger. "You suggest we abandon our traditions? Listen to the humans." Voss tilted his head, a gesture that somehow conveyed both amusement and disappointment. "I suggest you want to succeed more than you want to be right." He tapped a claw against his desk. "Your next mission is in 3 days. Squad Theta will face a team of Krovar warriors in an urban warfare scenario. If your human squad members can contribute meaningfully to a victory, you will consider their tactical input in future missions. If they prove useless, they will be removed from Squad Theta permanently." The challenge was clear: win with human tactics or lose the humans entirely. For Crag and Thornak, it was a chance to prove that their way was the only way. For Hana, Deho, and Bora, it was a chance to prove they belonged. Hana spent the next 2 days barely sleeping. She analyzed footage of Krovar urban combat tactics. She studied the simulation environment map. She made plans and discarded them, made new plans and refined them. Deho and Bora worked with her, but they could see the pressure wearing her down. "We have fought Krovar before," Bora said quietly. He was small for a human male, slim and quick, trained in infiltration tactics. "They are stronger than us in every way." "Strength is not everything," Hana said. She pointed at the map. "They fight like all apex predators fight. Direct, aggressive. They expect their enemy to be afraid. They have never needed to be subtle because they have never needed to be." "And humans?" Deho asked. "Humans survived by being prey that fought back," Hana said. "We learned to ambush, to trap, to turn the environment into a weapon. We learned to hunt things bigger than us by being smarter than them." She looked at both of them. "We cannot beat the Krovar in a fair fight, so we make sure the fight is not fair." The day of the simulation arrived. Squad Theta entered the urban environment, a digital recreation of a war-torn city. Buildings rose on all sides, some damaged and unstable. Narrow streets created kill zones. The Krovar team entered from the opposite side. 5 warriors programmed for maximum aggression. Crag and Thornak immediately moved to form their defensive wall in the main street. "We hold here," Crag announced. "They will come to us." "No," Hana said. "If we stay here, they will surround us and destroy us from multiple angles. We need to move." "We do not run from enemies," Thornak said. "It is not running," Hana said. "It is choosing the battlefield." She pointed at a section of the map on their tactical displays. There, a narrow alley with unstable buildings on both sides. "We lure them there, and then what?" Crag demanded. "We still must fight them. And then we drop a building on them," Bora said with a small smile. The plan was insane. The Skorvax warriors clearly thought so, but Instructor Voss had given them an order: consider human tactical input. Reluctantly, Crag and Thornick agreed to try it once. The simulation began. Deho and Bora made themselves visible to the Krovar team, then retreated quickly when the warriors charged. The Krovar, seeing fleeing prey, pursued immediately. This was their instinct. This was what they had done for thousands of years: chase down the weak and tear them apart. They followed the humans into the narrow alley. Crag and Thornick were waiting there, forming their armored wall that blocked the exit. The Krovar warriors found themselves in a kill zone, trapped between the Skorvax ahead and the unstable buildings on both sides. But the Krovar were strong. They began to advance, confident they could smash through the Skorvax defense. That confidence was their weakness. Hana had spent hours studying the building damage patterns. She knew which supports were weakest, which walls would fall with the right impact. Bor had planted small breaching charges at key structural points before the fight began. When the Krovar warriors were exactly where Hana needed them, Bora triggered the charges. The explosions were small, precisely calculated not to harm the warriors directly but to destroy the structural integrity of the buildings. On both sides of the alley, both buildings collapsed inward. The falling debris did not kill the Krovar warriors. The simulation had safety protocols, but it trapped them completely, buried under tons of rubble that would take hours to move. In a real combat situation, they would be helpless, eliminated. Then Deho filled the alley with smoke grenades, eliminating the Krovar's sight advantage, and Hana, moving through the chaos with practiced precision, systematically targeted each trapped warrior with neural strikes to joints and vulnerable points. She had studied Krovar anatomy as thoroughly as she studied everything else. One by one, the simulation registered the Krovar warriors as disabled. The exercise was over in 7 minutes. Squad Theta had won. The silence in the observation room was heavy. Instructor Voss played the footage 3 times for the assembled training staff. Crag and Thornack watched without speaking. The other Skorvax warriors in the facility watched with expressions that might have been shock. That was not honorable combat, one Skorvax observer said. That was hunting, Instructor Voss replied. And hunting is what wins wars. He brought up additional displays showing combat footage from dozens of worlds. Watch. Every apex predator species in this room fights the same way. Frontal assault. Overwhelming force. Minimal maneuvering. You have all spent your evolution at the top of your food chains. You have never needed complex tactics because your natural advantages always won. He switched to footage of human soldiers in combat. Humans evolved differently. They spent millions of years being hunted by creatures stronger and faster than them, creatures with claws and fangs and natural armor. So humans learned to survive through intelligence, through preparation, through making every environment a weapon. They learned to hunt things that should have been impossible to kill. Voss looked directly at Crag and Thornack. Your ancestors developed armor and strength to win battles. Human ancestors developed strategy and creativity to survive extinction. Both approaches have value, but only one approach teaches you how to defeat an enemy that is stronger than you. After the briefing, Crag approached Hana in the training hall. The massive Skorvax warrior stood before her, armored plates shifting with some internal conflict. Finally, he spoke. I was wrong about humans. You were wrong about tactics, Hana corrected gently. Your strength and armor are real advantages. But advantages are not strategies. Strategies win fights. Teach me, Crag said. The same words Deho had spoken months ago. Teach me to think like a human warrior. Over the next 2 weeks, Squad Theta became the most successful unit in the Crucible. They combined Skorvax strength and defense with human tactics and adaptability. Crag and Thornack learned to use their armor not just as protection, but as mobile cover for more vulnerable squad members. The humans learned to trust in the Skorvax to hold critical. 5 months into training, something changed. Hana noticed it first in the small things. Equipment assigned to human recruits developed malfunctions more often than it should. Training schedules for mixed species squads with human tactical advisors were suddenly modified, giving less preparation time. Accident reports for human injuries increased, though the injuries were always explained as training mishaps. Nothing was obvious enough to prove. Everything was just barely within the range of normal. But Hana had built her entire strategy around pattern recognition, and she saw the pattern clearly. Someone was trying to push humans out of the program without making it obvious. Deho confirmed her suspicions one evening. 3 human recruits dropped out this week, he said quietly, sitting beside her in the mess hall. That is more than the previous 2 months combined. Injuries? Hana asked. Accidents, Deho said. All officially accidents. But Jisoo checked the medical records. The injuries match attack patterns from Krovar combat techniques. Jisoo was one of the few human females in the program, training as a medical specialist. She approached their table, her face serious. Someone filed anonymous reports claiming human recruits are using banned enhancements. The accusations are nonsense, but they require investigations. Every investigation delays training progression. Hana felt cold despite the warm meal in front of her. This was not random. This was organized. Someone with authority was systematically working to discredit and remove human warriors from the program. That night, she could not sleep. She lay in her bunk thinking about who would benefit from human failure. The answer was obvious. Anyone who felt threatened by humans challenging the traditional power structure. The Krovar had dominated military leadership for centuries. Human tactical innovations threatened that dominance. A message alert broke her thoughts. Classified communication from someone named Minho, an intelligence analyst she had never met. The message was brief. They are planning something for the trial of Ascension. You need to know. Meet me at Observation Deck 7. Come alone. Hana knew it could be a trap, but she also knew that staying ignorant was more dangerous. She dressed and moved through the quiet station corridors. Observation Deck 7 was rarely used, offering a view of empty space that most species found boring. Minho was waiting there, a thin human male in his early 30s with tired eyes. You are Hana, he said. It was not a question. You said they are planning something. Minho pulled out a secure data pad. I work in communications intelligence. Part of my job is monitoring encrypted messages for security threats. 3 weeks ago, I noticed unusual traffic between General Korvax, the Supreme Krovar military commander, and several council representatives. He showed her message fragments he had managed to decode. None of them were complete, but together they painted a clear picture. The trial of Ascension, the final evaluation where top recruits faced each other in live combat, was being manipulated. The matchups were being arranged not for fair competition, but for specific outcomes. They want to eliminate human influence, Minho said. Not by kicking us out directly. That would look too obvious. Instead, they will arrange matchups that pit our best recruits against the most lethal warriors from other species. Make it look legitimate. If we refuse to fight, we are branded as cowards. If we fight and lose badly, they claim we do not belong here. How many matchups? Hana asked. All of them, Minho said. Every human recruit in the top evaluation tier will face opponents specifically chosen to destroy them. You especially. They have arranged for you to fight Captain Vorak himself. Hana stared at the data, her mind racing. Vorak was 300 years old. A master warrior who had forgotten more about combat than she had learned in her entire life. Fighting him was not a challenge. It was execution disguised as evaluation. I need to tell Commander Thane, Hana said. Thane was the human liaison officer, former Earth Special Forces. He already knows, Minho said. I reported this to him yesterday, but his hands are tied. Without absolute proof of conspiracy, accusing coalition leadership would give them justification to expel humanity from the defense force entirely. They would claim we are paranoid, divisive, unable to accept legitimate competition. So we do nothing? Commander Thane says we do the only thing humans know how to do, Minho said. We fight anyway. We show them that even in a rigged game, humans refuse to quit. Hana met with Commander Thane the next day in his secure office. He was a tall man with gray hair and scars that told stories of old battles. He looked at her with sympathy and respect in equal measure. You understand the situation, Thane said. They want to make an example of us, Hana replied. Yes. Thane pulled up files on his screen. The trial of Ascension has always been dangerous. Deaths are rare but accepted as part of the evaluation. What General Korvax has arranged is not technically against regulations. He has simply ensured that every matchup maximizes the chance of human defeat or injury. You cannot prove conspiracy. Ambassador Urin has been trying, Thane said, but the Krovar have been very careful. Everything appears legitimate on the surface. And if we refuse to participate, we prove their claim that humans are not warrior material. Hana studied the matchup list. Every human recruit was facing opponents 2 or 3 weight classes above them, specialists chosen specifically to counter human tactical advantages. The fights were scheduled to be brutal and public, broadcast across coalition worlds. There is another option, Hana said slowly. We volunteer to fight under any conditions they choose. Make it very public. Show that humans do not back down from challenges, even impossible ones. Thane looked at her for a long moment. You understand that volunteering will not change the matchups? You will still fight Vorak. The others will still face opponents designed to destroy them. I understand, Hana said. But even in defeat, we can prove something important. We can show that humans belong in this arena, that we fight with courage even when the odds are against us, that we refuse to accept that strength is the only thing that matters. You might die, Thane said bluntly. Vorak is a legendary warrior. He could kill you without meaning to. He could, Hana agreed, but I have been studying him for 5 months. I know his patterns. I know his techniques. I know how he thinks. She smiled slightly. You said it yourself, Commander. We do what humans do. We study the predator until we understand it better than it understands itself. Word spread through the human ranks quickly. Every human recruit volunteered to fight in the Trial of Ascension, even after learning the matchups were designed to eliminate them. It was an act of defiance that caught many by surprise. The announcement was made officially 3 days later. The trial would proceed as scheduled. The matchups were confirmed. But something unexpected happened. Crag and Thornak, the Skorvax warriors from Squad Theta, filed a formal protest with the trial council. These matchups are dishonorable, Crag declared before the assembled training staff. They are designed not to test skill but to ensure specific outcomes. This violates the spirit of the trial. Other warriors joined the protest. Instructor Voss spoke eloquently about how human tactical contributions had improved performance across all squads. Even some Krovar warriors, those who had trained alongside humans and learned to respect them, added their voices. The protest did not change the trial. The council ruled that all matchups were within regulations. But the protest changed something else. It fractured the unity that General Korvax had been counting on. The galaxy was watching now, and not everyone was convinced that eliminating human influence was the right path. Hana spent the remaining weeks before the trial training harder than ever. She studied Vorak's fighting style until she could predict his movements in her sleep. She practiced against larger opponents, learning to use their strength against them. She pushed her body to its limits and then pushed further. Deho trained with her often. You know this is insane, he said one evening after a brutal sparring session. Yes, Hana agreed, breathing hard. Vorak is the best warrior in the facility, possibly in the entire coalition. I know. You cannot beat him through strength or speed. I know that too. Deho was quiet for a moment. Then how? Hana thought about all the hours she had spent studying, about the pattern she had identified, about the fundamental difference between predators and prey. Vorak has been fighting for 300 years, she said. He has developed instincts that have kept him alive through countless battles. Those instincts are his greatest strength, and instinct is just pattern recognition that has become automatic, Hana said. If I can understand his patterns better than he does, I can use those instincts against him. I can make him react in ways he thinks are right but are actually wrong. You are going to trick a 300-year-old master warrior? I am going to be unpredictable, Hana corrected. Humans are very good at that. We are the species that threw rocks at saber-toothed cats and somehow survived. We are the species that hunted mammoths by exhausting them over days of pursuit. We won by being the enemy that did not make sense, by refusing to follow the rules that every other predator followed. The night before the trial, Hana received a message from an unknown source. Just one line of text. The galaxy is watching. Show them what he... The grand arena was larger than Hana had imagined. It could hold 10,000 spectators and every seat was filled. Representatives from all 12 coalition species had come to watch the Trial of Ascension. Millions more watched on broadcasts across known space. This was not just a training evaluation anymore. It had become a symbol. The early matches began at dawn. Hana watched from the staging area as Bora faced a Raptok aerial specialist. The bird-like warrior had 3-dimensional mobility and razor-sharp talons. Bora was a stealth specialist trained for infiltration, not aerial combat. The fight was brutal. The Raptok dominated from above, diving and striking with talons that left deep cuts across Bora's arms and shoulders. But Bora refused to fall. He adapted, using the terrain to limit the Raptok's flight space. He forced close-quarters combat where his opponent's wings became a liability. He lost the match after 12 minutes, bleeding from multiple wounds, but he had grounded the Raptok twice, something that had never been done before in recorded matches. The crowd's reaction was muted but notable. They had expected a massacre. Instead, they witnessed a fight. Hyejin faced a Manthar Blade Master next. The insectoid warrior moved with inhuman speed, 4 arms wielding practice blades that blurred through the air. Hyejin was a combat engineer, not a duelist. She should have been cut down in seconds. But Hyejin understood machines and systems. She treated the fight like a mechanical problem. The Manthar's speed came from optimized movement patterns. His blade work followed geometric paths designed for efficiency. These were patterns. Patterns could be predicted. She lasted 8 minutes before the Manthar's superior speed overwhelmed her. But in those 8 minutes, she landed 3 solid strikes. Any one of them would have been fatal if weapons were unshielded. The Manthar warrior acknowledged her with a gesture of respect as she left the arena. Match after match, human recruits faced opponents designed to destroy them, and match after match the humans lost. But each loss was a statement. They were fighting warriors with centuries of training, with natural advantages that humans could never match. And yet every human recruit forced their opponent to work harder than expected, to adapt, to acknowledge they were in a real fight. Daeho's match came in the afternoon. He faced Thornak, the Skorvax warrior from Squad Theta. This matchup had been designed as cruelty. 2 warriors who had become friends, forced to fight for political theater. But Thornak and Daeho turned it into something else. They delivered a technical masterpiece. Thornak's armored defense against Daeho's mobile tactics. Skorvak's strength against human adaptability. They fought for 19 minutes, the longest match of the day. When Daeho finally fell, exhausted but unbroken, Thornak helped him to his feet. "You are a worthy opponent," Thornak announced loudly enough for the entire arena to hear. Humans belong among warriors. The crowd erupted. Not all species approved. Many Krovar warriors sat in stone silence, but others, warriors from species who had trained alongside humans, showed their support vocally. The political unity that General Korvax had counted on was fracturing in real time. Then came the final match. Hana versus Captain Vorak. The arena fell silent as they entered from opposite sides. The size difference was shocking even to those who knew them. Vorak stood 8 feet tall, 400 pounds of muscle and scale and ancient combat experience. Hana looked like a child standing across from him. The environment randomized and the screens showed the result. Jungle terrain. Dense vegetation, uneven ground, limited sightlines. Not an advantage for either fighter, but it would limit Vorak's reach advantage slightly. Hana controlled her breathing. 5 months of study had led to this moment. She knew Vorak's fighting style better than she knew her own. She had watched hundreds of hours of his matches. She had identified patterns that even he probably did not know he followed. But knowledge was not victory. Vorak had 3 centuries of experience. He had adapted and survived against countless opponents. He would not be easy to trick. The match began. Vorak did not underestimate her. That was the first thing Hana noticed. He moved carefully, defensively, testing her responses. He had studied her matches too. He knew she was dangerous. This was not going to be a quick victory. He was treating her like a real opponent. That was good. Hana needed time. The first 5 minutes were brutal. Vorak's superior reach and strength kept her defensive. She dodged and blocked, giving ground steadily. Every attack he made was controlled, precise, delivered with the confidence of someone who had executed these techniques 10,000 times. But every attack also taught Hana something. The slight telegraph in his shoulder before a strike. The way he shifted his weight when preparing a tail sweep. The pattern of his breathing between combinations. She was learning him, building a mental model of how he thought and moved. At the 6-minute mark, she stopped retreating and started testing. Quick strikes that were not meant to land but to provoke reactions. Feints that drew specific responses. She was mapping his defensive instincts, finding the automatic reactions that 3 centuries of training had burned into his nervous system. Vorak began to press harder, sensing that time was not his friend. If Hana survived long enough to fully adapt to his style, his advantages would diminish. He increased his aggression, forcing her back again with a combination of strikes that would have overwhelmed any normal opponent. But Hana was no longer just reacting. She was reading the pattern. His attacks followed geometric logic, optimized for efficiency and power. 3 centuries of refinement had made them nearly perfect. Nearly. But perfect systems had a weakness. They were predictable to anyone who understood them completely. At the 10-minute mark, something shifted. Hana stopped defending and started predicting. She moved before Vorak completed his strikes, reading his micro-movements the way humans had once read the behavior of predators on Earth. She was inside his decision loop now, responding not to his actions but to his intentions. The crowd noise grew. Even those who wanted humans to fail could see what was happening. A master warrior was being systematically decoded by an opponent half his size and a fraction of his age. Vorak realized it too. Hana saw the moment of understanding in his ancient eyes. He changed tactics immediately, abandoning his refined techniques for more random, chaotic attacks. It was a smart adaptation, but it came from 300 years of experience, and experience itself was a pattern. Hana had studied old footage of Vorak fighting. Decades ago, before his techniques became so refined, she recognized the shift in his style. She had prepared for this exact adaptation. At the 15-minute mark, Vorak made his mistake. It was tiny, barely perceptible, a slight overextension on a tail sweep, a technique he had executed perfectly thousands of times. But he was tired now, fighting an opponent who should have been defeated 10 minutes ago. His body was older than he admitted. His reflexes were still excellent but no longer perfect. Hana did not just dodge the sweep. She timed her counter to the microsecond, using the momentum of his own attack against him. A series of strikes, each one targeting a balance point, each one forcing him into a worse position. She was not trying to hurt him. She was trying to disrupt the complex system of weight distribution and muscle tension that kept a warrior of his size mobile and dangerous. The final strike was almost gentle, a palm to his chest, delivered at the exact moment when his weight was wrong and his defensive stance was compromised by his own previous movement. It should not have been enough to fell a warrior of Vorak's caliber, but combined with everything that came before, with 15 minutes of systematic disruption to his balance and rhythm, it was enough. Captain Vorak, 300-year-old master warrior, fell to one knee, then to both knees. The automated scoring system registered a critical failure in combat stance. Match over. The arena exploded with noise, shock, disbelief, anger from some quarters, wild cheering from others. Hana stood over Vorak, breathing hard, her whole body shaking from exhaustion and adrenaline. She had won. Against all logic and reason, she had won. General Korvax was on his feet immediately, demanding a review of the match. But Council Arbiter Velshara, an ancient Vryn telepath, overrode him with a telepathic broadcast that reached every mind in the arena and every screen across Coalition space. You brought humans into the Coalition because you needed warriors. What you did not understand is that humanity has been at war with stronger predators since they climbed from the trees of their home world. They survived not by being the strongest, but by being the most adaptable, the most persistent, the most willing to learn from every encounter. You have spent centuries at the top of your respective food chains. Humans spent millions of years climbing from the bottom. That difference shapes everything they are. You see a small, weak species that should not belong among warriors. They see themselves as survivors who refuse to go extinct despite being surrounded by creatures that wanted to eat them. Both perspectives are true, but only one perspective understands what it takes to defeat an enemy that is stronger than you. The silence that followed was profound. Velshara continued, "The trial results are clear. Human recruits, including Hana, are granted full acceptance into the Galactic Defense Force with immediate rank elevation to lieutenant. Furthermore, human